on everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Thanks for joining in. Yes, sorry, I have been away, so I've been a bit slack. But anyway, we will carry on. I hope everyone's great. So in this section 2, part 2, we are going through basically Hawaiian folklore is where the attention has been. So Graham makes a great point where in the Hawaiian folklore, Lua Nu is who they call the second Noah, and the second Noah is Abraham. And they have the stories in Hawaiian folklore of Joseph in Egypt, which they cannot get this information without being privy to the information from Egypt. So there is there is complete mathematical possibility that all stories in the Hawaiian folklore about the Mehahui people relate to no one else but no other person but Abraham, Isaac. And it is very remote that they could have any other there's just too many correlations and details in this, and I'll give you some. So the Menahui people, the practice of circumcision, that is huge. There was no other culture in Egypt, in Middle East, that knew the stories of Joseph in Egypt and circumcision, how important that was to be in alignment with God. So the Menahui people, who Māori were calling themselves, originally in New Zealand, were circumcising themselves, the men, and so keeping in mind that Abraham's household was big. He did have 300 plus servants. So, but to be in the household of Abraham was actually to be in under the blessing, right, of God, or under the blessing of Eor. So this is very interesting to see that. Also, this is way before Joseph, way before Egypt had slaves that were made up of the Israeli people at that time. Way before them, they had 15 dynasties, rulers of Egypt, before Joseph had entered the land. I hope you guys know the bit of Bible history about this, but it's very interesting. It all plays into it. Anyway, the king of Egypt were called the Mene, Mene, M-E-N-E, which is so close to the word Menahui. So Mene was kings of Egypt. That's what they called them. So it was like the Menahui people were saying we're people of the king, and in their eyes it would have been Abraham, because they knew the Abraham stories. So it's quite... Anyway, before all of Joseph and the slaves were Egypt inhabitants, there was always a time in Egypt, in that dynasty, 15 dynasties before, that there was options to immigrate. So obviously some of the Menahui, or the Māori, came to immigrate southward, draw down from the Red Sea. And there are many encounters and traditions to support this, that there were people coming from the Red Sea down to the Persian Gulf and the coast of Burma, or I think they call it Myanmar now. And Java is, I think it's close to Indonesia. Java folklore states that settlements came from the Red Sea. So possible long distance travel from down to the Red Sea, down into Malaysia, is absolutely possible, considering the long distance, to the Pacific Islands, to New Zealand. That's the big haul, isn't it? So, but proof, Graham outlays it. There is the double hull waka, which is the 1980s, and they voyaged that from Hawaii to Tahiti and back again. So that is some feet in a waka. And that was called the Hukulua. I'm going to get these names wrong, okay. And so the Reverend J. Williams told in the 1800s in Tahiti the arrival of a waka that was planked and sewn together with a 4-meter depth, travelled from 700 miles away to Tahiti. So that's amazing. There is also a book out, a shout-out book of Nanga Waka o Nehira. That is on page 29. You can read about a little bit about that and even get it if you like, because that talks about the story of 7 wakas and sailing east, which is a really good reference point too. So that's exciting. There's also like even the other ones where the Incas had a king called Tupac, and he travelled to the Pacific and back again. This is recorded in Peter Buck's book. So they were huge travellers, and it's just encouraging to know that they're coming from Egypt, and Abraham's household is very, very significant. And they kept to the original worship of the true God, which is Eo. So he usually talks about the cultural signposts of the Indo-Malay regions the Polynesians came out of. Yes, so sort of coming through to Malay, and you can say that here Graham refers to the boats got better, stronger, just by that having cultural interactions coming all the way through the Polynesian areas. So made different wakas, different strengths to them, and so that by the time they were hitting the Pacific, they were well and truly beautiful big wakas that were able to travel far distances. So the most ancient settlements in Pacific is actually Tonga and Samoa. Yet the pottery in Tonga is made with Fiji clay, so indicating a Fiji settlement. So these people were travelling around in the islands anyway, right? Moving on to why Maori immigrated to New Zealand. There was 200 wakas known to immigrate to New Zealand and back again. So there's many very, very varied versions and traditions, written or non, why they left and why they came to New Zealand. But the overall majority came in haste from Hawaii to Rarotonga to New Zealand. And in haste, I mean because of persecution. And Graham outlines the religious persecution that was happening then, which is very interesting, because Tahiti and French Polynesia were absolutely drenched in human sacrifice. They were worshipping deities, entities, and doing the blood sacrifices they needed to get that alignment. So that's unfortunate. It made them very, also quite military-minded, and they were quite set on persecuting those that were of the Eo priesthood. And so when this, Graham talks about in this book, where Parao's persecution, he was a military king, and he came from Tahiti, and he really did take a lot of the Hawaiian, because Hawaii was actually quite strong on Eo, strong on worshipping the god of all gods, and they did not have temples, they did not have human sacrifices, they were peaceful people. And but when Tahiti's king came, Parao's, he persecuted them greatly, and some of them were asked to die. some of them were asked to join him and never to speak about Eeyore to the people ever again, because this is interesting, because in Tahiti they actually did know the God of all gods, but there is a difference, because the God of all gods you play by his rule book, where if you're going to be an idol worshipper, somehow you get to manipulate these demons. Well, you think you are, but the demons are actually manipulating you, right? So to control people, they call on the entities to do this. So that's why this king did not felt like Eeyore priesthood was a threat to his kingship, and knowing that the God of all gods does favour the humble, he knew that his kingship could be overthrown by anyone aligning to the God of all gods, right? Which is sort of a reflection of what's happening now as well, if you really think about it, eh? It's interesting. But anyway, so some of them died for their God, some of them did join him and became worshippers of pagans' influence, and some of them immigrated to New Zealand and fled. And some of them obviously came here too with some pagan influence as well later on. So anyway, Graham goes through it. It's very interesting. It's a good getting into some really deep subjects now. It's really cool. And so anyway, I'll keep it under 13 minutes, but that's about it. I will what else can I say? Having traced the original, so going back to now, we've done this now. We've traced the original Māori and their arrival to Aotearoa. Okay, we've done this. And now we are ready to know about the Metahui people, who make up a lot of the Māori, and their descendants, and Aotearoa, and what they actually believed about the God of all gods, and how important it was for them to keep the traditions of worshipping in alignment to him. Okay, well, Mate wa, I'll see you later. I'll talk to you in the next section, which will be section 13. I hope you read it before you join in. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.